Hi, my name is Connie, and I've been with William Barthman for approximately 40 years. We were on the corner of Main Lane and Broadway. All our merchandise used to be shown in the window, very little inside because we didn't have too much room. The original owner, when I started with Barthman, there weren't any women that were allowed on the floor selling. They were just all men. And the only women that were allowed in the store, they had a balcony where the money was, we had a pneumatic tube system, and then we put our money into this little metal tube, close it up, and it would shoot it up to the ladies and they would take the money and they would take the receipts and they would input it. Actually, at the time, write it up. We didn't have computers. So that was pretty interesting. And so when I came along, they started hiring women to be on the sales floor around 1983, 82, 83 in that area. And I knew the owner who purchased William Barthman, which was Jerry Natkin. I used to work for him in his other locations. And then he brought me over to the New York store. And there was only men. That time, like I said, the women were upstairs. Then they started hiring women. You were also allowed to smoke in the store. You were allowed to smoke cigarettes, which is crazy. So one of the previous owner, which was Bob Schilleber, the company was, Jerry Natkin bought the company from Bob Schilleber, who was married to a Barthman. So that's how he acquired the store, Bob Schilleber. And then he sold the store to Jerry. And then Bob Schilleber also worked there at the time for many years with me and all the men, and then women started coming along. But I was not hired for sales at that time, even though I did do sales. I was hired for service, taking in watches, helping wherever I could. I did a little bit of everything, which is, for me, I like it because I don't like to be bored. So I did sales, I did service, whatever they needed me to do. We had quite a few events. We had the Chinese New Year. When we hired the guy to be in the dragon, we had dumplings, we had, instruments. It was quite interesting. It wasn't the biggest thing there, Chinese New Year, but we did it, for the people that we knew. What else can I tell you? The clock. The clock has been there and is still there. They won't allow us to take the clock because it's historical or whatever. Well, we have one we have a replica of it in our wall, in our Barthman wall there, and it looks exactly like the one on the floor. So it's, when you look at it, it reminds me of that store, which was a beautiful old-time store. Now things have changed, obviously. One of the biggest things that I've seen through the years is corporate gifts. They don't do a lot of corporate gifts. We used to do so many corporate gifts. We had a gallery and they would order things in silver bowls for the law offices and trays and, all different things. And then they had watches that have engraved for people who've been there 20, 30 years. They no longer do things like that. I think they moved on from that. So 9/11, I remember that day really, really well. I came up out of the train station and I turned the corner to walk up to Barthman. We used to get there early because we would set up the windows. Because, as I said before, all our merchandise, most of it was in the window. And then I walked in and I remember setting things up. It was a beautiful day. The sky was so blue. In my head, I kept thinking, wow, what a beautiful day. The sky is gorgeous. And I went into work and I started prepping. And then came that time when the first plane hit. And I was just about handing my client his watch, because again, we used to open up very early for people who would go into work early so they could pick up their repairs. And I was handing him an e-bell, I'll never forget. And as I was handing him the e-bell, the whole building shook. And we all looked at each other. And my manager at the time ran outside and he looked up because we were right at the corner, so you could look up and you could see everything. Came back in, he says, oh, I don't know, that doesn't look good. There's a gaping hole and smoke. And, I finished up with the customer and I went outside and you'd see smoke billowing out of the building and papers flying everywhere. It was like, is this really happening up there of all places? And then we came back in and he just, and I have to say, I have to praise him because he did say, I don't have a good feeling about this. He goes, maybe we should start unpacking and putting everything away. Because again, we had all the side window and the front windows, and there was a lot of windows, and he just didn't know. He didn't have a good feeling. So he said, why don't we just pack everything back up? He said to me and the other employees that were there. I think we were about 3 or 4 at the time. And he says, let's put everything back into this vault and just close it up because we don't know what's going on. And we started doing that. And that takes us a little time because there's a lot of merchandise. You know, we watches, we had David German, we had tons of merchandise in our little store, but you know, and he was going to, his daughter at the time was going to Stuyvesant, so he wanted to get there because it was close to the 9/11 buildings. So he said, yeah, I think I'm going to go get my daughter, and his wife worked there with us also. And I said, okay, I said, I guess I'm going to go home because we closed up, and you know, not knowing what was going to go on, we didn't want to hang around. But as we were closing up and we went out the side entrance, felt very eerie. People had, at that time, a boombox, you know, so they had the boombox sitting in the middle of the street. All the cars had stopped to watch this. Then the other plane hit. So, I mean, it was just chaotic. And I said, oh my God, you know, I don't know if I want to hang around here. I was very lucky that I got on the train. And that was the last train that came out of, because they had stopped all trains. And they said, get on the train if you're coming because this is the last train. I took the J, you know, to take the M. And so this lady that I was sitting next to, she was in building 1, and she says, you know, they told me everything was fine. Go back to my office. And she says, I turned around. I says, no, I'm not going back to my office. I'm going to get out of here. And she took that. If she would have stayed, she would have died. I'll never forget it. That being said, once the train took off, then it stopped on the bridge, and we saw the towers fall. Very scary. But I thank God was not in that plume of smoke. But I did come back 3 days later and helped them take the merchandise out of the store because they had Rolexes and they had watches, and they were scared they were going to get looted because a lot of places were getting looted. So when we came back to the store, there was about 3 inches of dust in our store. Our windows actually imploded. They didn't explode because through a kind of made a barrier underneath, and then the windows exploded inside. And we went in, and we were also looted. We had stuff that we didn't put away because we didn't know what to think. So we had a carousel of gold charms, which were taken, our camera, which we used to take pictures of jewelry, and it was just a disaster. And coming back, it was really like, do we really want to be here? The bell kept ringing that they thought another building was going to come down, and it was scary, but I wanted to come back. I wanted to come back to work. I wanted to come back here because I wasn't going to let them terrorize me. That's what they wanted. Although I have to say, a lot of people did not come back to work in the store. Some of our employees did not come back. They did not feel comfortable. We also lost a lot of customers from those buildings because we used to do appraisals. We used to do repairs. I still have watches of some of the people that died in that building that never came back with their watch. I know a couple of customers. A lot of the agencies that, you know, did business with us were there. That was a day I'll never forget. And then we were closed for a while. And then when we came back to the city, we worked in our gallery, which was on the 5th floor. And if you go to the 9th floor, because they owned the whole building, you could see out into the mess, the fiery inferno that was still burning for months. It was just burning, and the smoke, and the people out there just trying to find people. And it was something I'll never forget. I lived through that. I lived through the blackout we had here when everybody had to walk over the bridge, and it was a lot. A lot happened down here, and I was here for a lot of it, and I'm still here. So we were on the corner of 174 Broadway. That's the original. And then 9/11 happened. And then we got back to working. We opened the store and things were okay. But I think management and the owners wanted a bigger location because they wanted more brands at the time. They moved over to 176 Broadway, which was about 4 times the size of the original location. And that brought in more designer brands, more watches. And we had a very large location in the bigger repair section. And so we did a lot there. We, how can I put it? The transition was hard because they built the store. So it took a long time. But when it was done, it was beautiful. And we still had our old customers that came back to us, and then we were there for about 12 years. So when that store closed, we didn't have a location because they were looking for one, and then working out of our Brooklyn location for a year. They found this location, and we're here 5 years now. And it's really nice. I love it down here. It's very residential, even though we have the stock exchange and other stores. It's just, it's very homey. It's nice. You know, we have a lot of tourists, and we get to meet people from all over the world, which is nice. I think I like what I do. Yeah, I've been here a long time. People say, oh, what are you doing sitting there? You could have done this and that and that. But you know what? I raised a family. I like what I do, and I feel that's important. I like making people happy. I like talking to people. I've been in service and now selling for such a long time. This is all I know. This is what I do. Well, I think if you like it and you do it for a long time, you're going to get good at what you do because that's what you want to do, you know? I think we have a great bunch of people that work here. I think they're very caring. I think they're helpful. My coworkers, I mean, we would do anything for each other. So I think it's the camaraderie and wanting to do things and be helpful. We really have issues. And I think that's important because, you know, even a big company or a small company, you're always going to have problems. We don't have that. And I like that. Yeah, like a family, because I mean, you're here more than you are at home sometimes, you know, so it's, you want that feeling, and it's good because everybody's so nice. And I think that's important.